Hello, this is Alicia with Performentor, and we're having another Heuristics Conversation podcast. And today we get to talk to Luca Dellanna, and he is an Antifragile Organizations Consultant, and he's based in Turin, Italy. And he is an author of many, many books, 7, and probably more to come. And I think the most popular one is 100 Truths You Will Learn Too Late. Definitely recommended. Definitely check out his books. But until then, we get a chance to hear from him directly. Anything that you'd like to add, Luca?
Thank you, Alicia, for inviting. No, that's mostly it. That's what I'm doing right now. Most of my days, consulting and holding courses on anti-fragile organizations.
Yes, that's right. I attended one of Luca's Anti-Fragile Organizations online courses. Also recommend that, so check that out if you're interested in exploring. I think that you'll find that that approach is very consistent with what we've been talking about in the Trust Algorithm book. So the heuristic that I wanted to talk to you about is when making changes, always talk to people with skin in the game, and wanted to get your initial reactions to that one.
No, I love it, and I think that's one of the most important heuristics that there are, and the one that, if it's not followed, it's one of the ones that can cause the most damage. In particular, if you're not just talking, but you're also like giving people control, or you're delegating to them, and then you might have very bad surprises. And also, even if you're just listening to advice, because yeah, skin in the game is also, as you're writing, and as Taleb is writing as well, it's not just about aligning incentives, but it's also making sure that you listen to people who've done it before. Because the big difference is that if they have skin in the game and they've done before, and their advice was very bad, then they wouldn't be there anymore giving advice. And that's, for example, what happens with bad pilots, in some way also with bad entrepreneurs. Like if they have terrible ideas, then their business is more likely to fail, for example, and they disappear, and you're less likely to get advice from them. So it's an extremely important heuristic.
Yeah. I mean, I think you described pretty accurately why it's important. I also wanted to, because I know when I talk to salespeople, well, at least in the United States, I don't know, but they're like, yeah, salespeople are like, yeah, skin in the game. I get it. You know, that means variable compensation. That means that they're getting a commission. And their approach to it doesn't seem to have the other really important part of skin in the game is exposure to the consequences. Like if there's something that is done that is costly to the client or costly to the business, they're free and easy. So that's actually not real skin in the game. I mean, do you find that the same mistake is made by other people that you talk to?
Yes, I've seen it a lot, for example, with the pandemic. I heard a lot of people saying, oh, the people in the government, they have skin in the game because if they take wrong decisions and coronavirus becomes endemic in their country, then they're also likely to die. And while it's true that in some ways they do have incentives, on the other hand, let's say that the virus becomes endemic, what's the chances actually that those people will die? It's extremely low still. So if it's all incentives, or if the chances, if wrong, of suffering consequences is extremely low, you have what I call theoretical skin in the game, but it's not practical skin in the game. I hear a lot of times with sometimes you hear some entrepreneurs with very dubious practices, and you hear some people who are saying, oh, but he's a great entrepreneur, he has skin in the game, he put all his money on the line. And that might be true, but if you're seeing that there's an entrepreneur, for example, that keeps breaking the law and nothing is happening to him, then he doesn't really have skin in the game. So it's important to make sure that it's not just theoretical skin in the game, but it's practical skin in the game.
Yeah. Like it's like there's a real and direct. It's not like a three steps removed skin in the game if all of these chain of events are actually connected in all cases, which they aren't necessarily. Yes, you might get caught like a con man. An entrepreneur which is dishonest is probably the same thing as a con man, or woman. Wouldn't want to discriminate. A con woman, maybe. If they're good at it enough so that they can evade getting caught, then that's not real skin in the game necessarily. And I guess the other part of the skin in the game, I guess there's like some physical danger. For my husband and I, when we watch these like spy TV shows with criminals on it, it always seems like so many of these criminals end up dead somewhere along the way. We're like, this is not a very safe profession. That definitely, though, is skin in the game, which is a silly example, maybe, but I don't know. But so I mean, what can you think of any examples that have come up recently? That maybe somebody listening to this, and gosh, I mean, I talk to people, for example, in all sorts of different industries. So any industry example is probably going to be useful, where you've seen somebody get it right, or maybe they've identified a gap in skin in the game, but then they changed something organizationally to fix it and then got a good result.
Yeah, so I see this a lot of times with in manufacturing companies. So big part of my background is in health and safety for manufacturing companies. And I've seen a lot of times where there are solutions, for example, for health and safety that are done at the top level of the organization, but then they just don't make sense at the lower levels. And for example, some equipment which is excessively difficult to wear or uncomfortable, and that's something that if you are not the one who's going to wear it, you will not know that it's uncomfortable, or you will discount it as something that doesn't really matter. And that's why, like, ideally you would have everyone wearing the personal protective equipment. Then of course it's not very practical. You cannot ask the CEO to spend his day on the production line. So instead it will be talk with people with skin in the game. So for example, you have the idea, oh, I will buy this personal protective equipment. First, go talk to the person who will use it. He has skin in the game, and he will probably give some good comment.
Yeah, some good comments, maybe some of them unfiltered. Yes, kind of like, this is stupid, this won't work, or this is really, actually, yes, I could see this working, and I guess that comes to, maybe not the senior manager or the head of the company asking these people, but somebody who's able to get the real answers.
Yeah, I have a very strong example on this. So the first company I ever worked for was DuPont. And one of the origin story of DuPont is basically DuPont was a chemist. He was working for Lavoisier in France, and then there is the French Revolution, and he fears for his life, and he decides to flee to the US, and he lands in Delaware, and he decides to build a chemical company there, a gunpowder factory. And gunpowder factories, they have this terrible property that they tend to explode a lot, and it's very dangerous. And by a lot, I mean that at the time, which is about more than 200 years ago, in a gunpowder company, you could even have 100 explosions per year. Of course, some small ones, but those are the numbers that you will see. And the way that he solved this problem is that he put two rules. The first one is that he and his family will move inside the compound. And the second, so real skin in the game for him. And the second one is that all new machineries during the first day, they have to be operated by a member of the top management. And these are basically two ways to put skin in the game on the people that take decisions and that they have the most leverage to produce changes. And he managed to cut a lot the incidents. So that's a great example of like skin in the game.
That's a Great example. It's 200 years old. Do you have a newer one? It's a great one.
Well, I don't know, but like for me, that's one of the rules that I have for whenever I do consulting, is that I spend more time talking to line workers and than to top management, just because they are the ones who actually will be impacted by any change. They are the ones that know the best the pain of the production, the pain of the customer, and so on. So even if I'm not putting real skin in the game in myself, that would be another application. You try to get close to those who have skin in the game, and you weight their opinions very dearly.
Well, I guess as a consultant, if you aren't doing a good job and aren't seen as being useful, then they can always cut that contract. So you do have skin in the game in some way. So yeah, the value's got to be real, and it's got to be felt, and it's got to be pretty fast too. I see that expression, exactly. Like absolutely, absolutely. I say this a lot, definitely with the consultants, like hit those fast pains first, like make sure that we are like establishing trust. The best way to establish trust is to demonstrate that we're on the same side and are solving things that they feel the results. I heard a story yesterday from a client, maybe not as dramatic as all the explosions, but something you said reminded me of it. As a pest control company, and they've got people out in the field, and they have to wear this backpack that's got the spray gizmo on the back, and they've gotten them these really expensive, wonderful rain jackets, because sometimes it rains, and come to find out that once they use the jackets for a little while, they start to leak. And in fact, and so they never used them. And so the company was spending all this money on equipment that was meant to make them more comfortable when it's wet, and they weren't using it. So finally, what did they do? They went out and talked to people, skin in game, say, show me what's happening. What happened was the backpack was so heavy that it would rub off the waterproofing here, and it would just like, it would start to just get soaked all in there. And so they went through this whole process of identifying actually different jackets or different rain gear that would actually work. And so they created a committee of people with skin in the game in order to solve the problem. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah. Feel free to use it in all of your training. Like, I guess, is there anything that maybe might surprise people about skin in the game as you talk about it, or as you, I guess, familiarize people with what anti-fragile organizations even means?
Well, I think that that's this concept that a lot of people have of skin in the game, that it just means aligned incentives. Mm-hmm. And the important thing is that, yes, it means aligned incentives, but both upside and downside. Mm-hmm. If you just have the upside and no downside, that's not incentive alignment, because you've seen that with banks, for example. You have a lot of traders which get a bonus if things go well, but no bonus if things go badly. And so what happens is that they end up taking excessive risk. Mm-hmm. And that's not incentive alignment. You want always to align both the upside and the downside.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen, maybe in banking or in sales, some sort of compensation arrangement where you feel like it is truly skin in the game?
Well, it's very hard to make arrangements with financial downside, unless, of course, we are excluding structures in which people are partners, mm-hmm. Like with the equity. But no, what happens, what is more likely to happen is situations in which, if something truly catastrophic happens, then people are fired. For example, you have industry where if something very catastrophic happens, people are radiated, like they cannot practice anymore in the industry. Mm. Or you have situations in which they have almost like a driving license with points.
Mm.
These are also some solutions. Yeah, mostly.
Yeah, I guess so. Like if you're an attorney, then being on the bar in the United States in order to practice, a CPA in the United States, you've got to have your CPA license. So if you have licenses or certifications, you've got to, I guess those can be revoked in certain cases, and that's probably a good thing. More in keeping with skin in the game, and that ensures a better level of ethical behavior.
Exactly.
Awesome. Anything else that you'd like to share? I know that we're kind of running up against the clock pretty soon, and I want to respect your time.
No, yes, I think that it's also great for people, even just if they're not doing something, just to put some skin in the game is a great way to get things done. I make a very simple example. When I write my books, I tend to take a lot of time because maybe I'm perfectionist and so on. And then you just put a deadline and you advertise it to the world. And that's kind of, in a way, skin in the game, because if you don't meet the deadline, then people will think that, oh, your reputation is down. Like you're not trustworthy. And so there are so skin in the game is not just about protecting downsides. Sometimes it's also about uncovering upsides.
Or like protecting your reputation. So if you go out and tell you, I'm going to be doing this thing by this date, and you keep missing your dates, then people are like,
Exactly. And then another consideration that I would say is that not necessarily you want to have the rule that you never like engage with people that do not have skin in the game, because sometimes there are some structures in which necessarily people don't want or cannot really have excessive skin in the game. But the idea is that if you engage with them, you protect your downside. Like, you know that you cannot blindly trust. And so either you consider it an experiment, you do it with a very small amount of money as an option or whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, I find that difficult, like how, because, my background's in human resources and, or personnel, or, people operations, depending on what somebody's current nomenclature is. And that's what the firm does that I run. And, by the very nature, we don't really have direct skin in the game, other than we might lose the client. And certainly, I mean, I guess I've got some exposure to liability. Of course, I've got insurance for that, and it would be horrible, in terms of reputation. So I guess a reputation cost. But just by the nature of certain roles, and human resources is one of them, it is very difficult. And I think what I find is that very often managers will try to eliminate their skin in the game by saying, hey, can HR person, can you do this thing for me? Which is actually their responsibility and their accountability. And that creates a lot of problems. And so maybe, and that's our role, is to make sure skin in the game goes where it belongs, which is usually not us. So anyway, yeah. So that I didn't even think of that until you brought that up. Well, thank you so much, Luca. I hope you have a great evening with a 6-hour time difference. I'm really grateful for you taking the time to speak with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alicia, for inviting. It was really a pleasure.
Oh, wonderful.